The Sony MDR-E868. Is it a Sapphire gem or consumer fodder? Every summer, out of necessity, I put down the headphone and pick up the bud. And the earbud. Sadly, flathead earbuds aren't for everyone. I've met a few people who simply couldn't even fit them in their ears without the buds either hurting them or watching them pop out immediately from the high pressure fit. I'm somewhere on the opposite end of the spectrum where buds have a looser fit, so efforts must be made to form a tighter seal, which in turn ensure a correct bass response. The major complaint from so many I've heard is that earbuds don't have bass, which is totally false. People who hear no bass from earbuds, even with foam covers, is analogous to complaining that a closed-back headphone has no bass after putting on velour earpads or wearing them over a hat. No seal means no bass. In 1995, after a long string of successes built upon over a decade of R&D and experience, the MDR-E868 was released. It was second in line to the earbud throne, upon which sat the MDR-E888, with its lab-grown biocellulose drivers similar to the royalty before it, the MDR-R10, CD3000, CD1700 and CD2000. The 868, however, unlike those bacteria-infested abominations, upon its crown sits a pair of gems, Sapphire vapor deposition coated drivers. I won't go into the details of vapor deposition, but simply, through the 90s and 80s, companies like Sony and JVC were experimenting with different materials applied as a microscopically thin coating to their dynamic drivers to add the correct amount of rigidity to the driver diaphragm and reduce distortion and create a more linear, distortion-free sound. These materials included titanium, ruby, sapphire, gold, and diamond. It was also around this time that companies had entirely stopped using this technique, which would only resurface in the past few years with companies experimenting again with diamond-like carbon or DLC vapor deposition coatings. For an earbud that is almost 30 years old, these have held up incredibly well. There is no hint of deterioration in the cable, the silicone head or stem. A very interesting aspect of this earbud is the flexible silicone stem, which may not have been obvious to those who have not owned these and only seen them in photographs or magazines. I suppose it serves some purpose as a strain relief, albeit a very minor one, but welcome nonetheless. The outer shell is a subtle mix of black and shiny grey or gunmetal coloured plastic, a more mature aesthetic compared to its gaudy chrome sibling. The case is as usual the practical rotary winding case, but in this instance made of a semi-translucent sapphire plastic that gives off an air of quality, although in reality it's no different to the more common opaque black ones. The cable uses the asymmetrical cable length design. I'm not a fan of this type of cable, but it does a good job of allowing you to take out one earbud for a conversation and not have both buds fall to the ground, so it has its uses. I prefer to let the longer cable dangle around the front instead of around the back of my neck, as I've experienced that turning my head can cause friction which pulls on the cable, unseating one earbud slightly. This type of cable might also be useful if you're sharing your buds with a
jirafa.
If you're familiar with how a range of different earbuds might sound, you may not agree with my impressions, and that's fine. Everyone's ears have a very different fit with buds, and your bass seal is not going to be the same as mine. To my ears, the E868 is on the brighter side of neutral. It doesn't sound cold or harsh, as the mids are tuned almost perfectly, but to my taste, there's an entire lack of bass. This problem is easily remedied with EQ, and these buds are more than capable of taking a healthy boost. After making some simple tone corrections, the upper bass is the most present, so sub-bass might have to be corrected and boosted with more detailed manual EQ tuning. After simple EQ, there will still be a lack of sub-bass, although this is true for most flathead earbuds. One of the first things you might notice before the tonal balance is the sense of space and staging. Flathead earbuds very often create a bigger soundstage than IEMs. Most of them are at least semi-open back, and in combination with their semi-open foam pads, a light and airy sound is easily achieved. obviously don't expect soundstage rivaling anything close to the HD800 or MDR-SA3000, but IEM connoisseurs might be surprised. The mid-range is very difficult to fault. The tonality there is superb, although just a touch of energy in the highest of the mids is missing, which leaves female vocals sounding distant or lackluster. This affects the overall timbre, which is left sounding somewhat matte and lacking contrast or sheen. The way to correct this is to add a small treble boost. Once this has been fixed, the buds can shine in almost any genre. For me, the weakest performance was from big movie soundtracks, which I think benefit from a larger transducer and full-size headphones, which give a more proper sense of scale. Earbuds are designed to run perfectly from any source. I found little to no benefit in running these through a desktop amplifier compared to a portable source. Not long ago, a budget champion reigned in the earbud scene and the earbud modification scene, the Vedo. These days, it is difficult to find a flathead earbud consumer that has not heard one, or a similar MX500 budget clone. After applying tone correction, the Vedo has noticeably more sub-bass and vastly more visceral impact. The mid-range tone is decent, but the tone is more difficult to correct, and the timbre suffers here, giving a duller representation of vocals. The weakest points are the treble and detail. While the Vedo became a budget king for supplying vastly superior bass and detail compared to past budget earbuds, it stumbles and falls over complex tracks where details become fuzzy and instrument separation becomes instrument diffusion. Obviously, it's not a fair comparison. If we put it alongside something a bit higher end, like the Yinyu BK2, the differences become much more difficult to pick out. The BK2 has a touch smaller staging, but sounds slightly more full-bodied. Neither are wrong, just different, although tonal accuracy and detail are about on par. These are both probably the best earbuds I own, and out of the two I found myself reaching more often for the Sony, being a bit of a soundstage and vintage junkie. Earbuds will never replace IEMs for the sheer quantity of detail and bass they offer, but IEMs may never reach the same sense of openness and soundstage that good flathead earbuds can offer, while allowing you to be aware of your environment, engage in conversation, or provide portable sound without violating your ear holes. The 868 does not have any claim as a final authority in tone, detail, or staging, but what it offers in all-day-long comfort that is missing in so many IEMs is often enough for me to take it out for the day, especially in the summer months. Now, if you enjoyed this video or any of my other videos, please consider subscribing. With my current headphone inventory, I've got at least 70 more videos to make on all flavors of headphone and even more in the future. I'll see you in the next one.